regards to adequate security personnel, the task force recommended minimum acceptable standards based on national best practices, which include at least one court security officer or CSO present in the courtroom whenever a court proceeding is being held, a second CSO assigned to certain types of court proceedings as outlined in your staff report on page 2, and an additional roving CSO on each floor that contains one or more courtrooms or judicial chambers. With regards to entry and parking, the task force noted that the best practice is to provide secure attached underground parking for all judicial officers. They recommended that any new or expanded facilities going forward include this type of parking. Since it's not feasible to retrofit most existing buildings throughout the state, the task force recommended that each jurisdiction that does not currently have secure attached parking work with the administrative office of the courts to implement measures like enclosure of the parking area, quick lift gate systems, video intercom systems, and so on. Regarding the third recommendation, third area of secure public spaces, the task force recommended a variety of practices to harden facilities and secure them, including reinforced glass and vulnerable areas, video surveillance, securing furniture in the courtroom to the floor to the extent possible. Regarding judicial officers moving within the court, the task force recommended that officers not be required to enter public areas in connection with ordinary duties. If it is necessary that they do so, they should be accompanied or monitored by security personnel. And the task force also emphasized the importance of proper security screening. With regards to the legislative proposals for each of these areas, the task force issued a number of recommendations. Regarding the personnel standards, the task force recommended a state mandate to provide adequate personnel, which would be supported by transitional state funding. Regarding the secure public spaces and secure parking, the task force recommended that the state provide for 2 separate non-lapsing funds, one fund for each of these items that would be funded over the same 5-year period for one-time expenses related to these operations. The final note in your packet on page 3 is some additional analysis conducted by council staff to better understand the role that external law enforcement organizations play in maintaining judicial safety. The chart, table 1 at the bottom of page 3, is a summary of emergency courthouse calls for service by calendar year, as divided between the district court and the circuit court in the county, and then divided by responding department between MCPD and the Rockville Police Department. You'll notice from the total column on the right-hand side of the chart that the number of calls for service has increased annually from 2021 to 2024. Council staff does note that the beginning of this chart, the years 2021 and 2022, correspond with the later stages of the court's phased reopening after COVID, and so there may have been fewer people at the courthouse in general, but nevertheless, the number of calls for service has increased. With that, happy to answer any questions or turn it over to our colleagues to discuss their experiences.
Let's turn it over to our colleagues, please, if they'd like to come forward. Again, thank you all very, very much for being here and for everything you do.
There a microphone there?
Well, yeah, as you can see, we're not in our usual room, and we appreciate all the assistance we can get, though it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. So, though I don't know how bad I thought it was going to be. So anyhow, Judge, if the panel could please introduce themselves, and then we'll turn to you, Judge Bonifant.
You have to push that little button.
Yeah.
Yep.
And just to make things very confusing, in this room, if it's green, it's on. The other room, if it's red, it's on. So anyhow.
Well, Councilmember Katz, Councilmember Lukey, Councilmember Mink, thank you for having us. I'm Jim Bonifant. I'm the administrative judge at the Circuit Court. I want to take one moment. I'll allow everybody to introduce themselves, but I do want to thank all of you and the council for the obvious seriousness that you all are taking this issue. We take it very seriously, and we've been assisted by the council, and I really do appreciate it with what you all just did. We'll go over in a few minutes some of the things I'd like to point out to you that continue to be problems. But again, thank you. It's a problem. I know everybody has a limitation of resources, so we've got to do the best we can with the resources we have. But I'm really pleased. So thank you very much.
Thank you. My name is Judge Deborah Dwyer. I'm an associate judge on the Circuit Court here in Montgomery County. Thank you all for having me.
Good afternoon. My name is Keena Jones. I'm the Assistant Sheriff at the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office.
Again, good afternoon. Maxwell Wee. I'm the sheriff here in Montgomery County. Again, council members, I appreciate the opportunity to present for you. I would like to note that also joining us in the back are Captain Chad Alloy. He's my division commander for our court services division, as well as Ms. Mona Cabrera, and she helps us navigate the budget issues. Thank you.
Well, I was going to see who else is going to be introducing themselves. As I went through the report and with the meetings that I have with the sheriff and the other members of the security committee we have at the court, the staffing of the sheriff's department continues to me to be the biggest problem that we face. We've gotten to the point now where the sheriffs keep me informed every morning as to whether they're able to cover all of the courtrooms. And then I send that message out to my colleagues and say, we're short here in this courtroom, that courtroom, please be patient because we're not going to start proceedings until that starts. The other area of concern that I have is, quite frankly, the manner and the way individuals who come to the courthouse are behaving. And it's becoming a serious problem. So much so that we have been working on an administrative order that I've been taking too long to get finalized. But it is a situation that to serve somebody with a show cause order, asking them to come before me to explain why I should not order that every time they come to the courthouse, they need to first notify the sheriff's office. That's a big deal because we have to be an open facility to make sure everybody knows this is where you come to resolve your disputes. But there have been incidences where people have been so outrageous that they're interfering with others who are coming to the courthouse. So much so recently we had an individual who was second in line after this person just berated the sweetest individual we have at the courthouse. This individual said, here's my name, let me know if you ever need a witness to watch that. So but that's time and time and time again. So those are individuals with their behavior in the courtroom or a courthouse. We have others who are quite honestly threatening judges through emails, and Judge Dwyer probably can comment on the situation she's had to deal with. But Judge Dwyer is not alone. Right now, we're dealing with with Judge Barry, Judge Chernosky, Judge Fairfax. They've all received threatening emails. Fortunately, part of the Wilkinson Act set up the Judicial Threat Center that's down in Annapolis. And Mr. Hisker has been terrific, and the sheriff's office has been terrific because every time we get to the point that we feel that a threat needs to be brought to their attention, they are on it like that. And not only providing security at the courthouse, but at our judge's home as well. So that now the other areas, we have individuals who are threatening courthouse staff as well. And we had a situation where an individual appeared at, and I don't want to give too much detail because I don't want to give too much information with regard to this one individual, but this person appeared at an employee of the courthouse's home at 10 o'clock at night on a Sunday night. And this individual was staying at a parent's house. We don't know how this individual got that information. So that's how serious it is. It wasn't like they could look in the land records or look at, in the telephone book or any normal way, showing my age there. So it's still concerning as to how this person found that address. But that's what's going on right now. So that's what I want to make sure that you all are aware of. I'll take any question. Go ahead.
I strongly support what Judge Bonifant just said. The behavior of individuals who come into our courthouse has escalated into just outrageousness. And, it is something that happens, I think, probably every single day in that courthouse. And sometimes we don't even notify Judge Bonifant. On Friday, I was doing a family docket and just a typical family docket. And there were no sheriffs in the courtroom. I didn't feel I needed any sheriffs in the courtroom. And one of the litigants just was out of control. And he didn't like my ruling. He was up and down in his seat. He was yelling, screaming, carrying on. And I asked my law clerk, please get a sheriff. We did not ring the bell for, an emergency, but the sheriffs came immediately, and more than one sheriff came immediately. And he calmed immediately. He was calmed down. And that's all I needed that day. But other days, Judge Bonifant mentioned the threats. This individual was not threatening me in any way, but he was concerning to everyone in the courtroom, and you could see it on their faces. But then sometimes we issue rulings where a party is very dissatisfied, and that's when the threats come. And I recently, I'd say in the last 5 months, had an individual who I ruled against him in a custody matter, another family matter, and his behavior was outrageous, as Judge Bonifant said. Threatening, the blood of my children will be on your hands, and this doesn't end here. And it was repeated over and over and over again. My staff was concerned, my law clerk, my admin aide were very concerned for their own safety, that he would show up. The sheriffs immediately provided us with reassurance. They provided us, they called, the Montgomery County Police got involved and called and visited this person and told him it had to stop. And so far, for the last, I think, 5 weeks, it has stopped. But those are the things we're faced with way too often. And when I say every day something happens in a courtroom, I don't think that's an exaggeration. So, we appreciate the sheriff's staff. They are as responsive, and we all appreciate everything they do for us. But it can be overwhelming.
So I will say that I appreciate those comments, first of all, judges. This is not going to be news, but just to reiterate, my current staff, and we're not unique to the sheriff's office, we're unfortunately facing roughly a 20% deficit in our frontline staffing. You're going to be seeing it later as these budgets are being presented to you, some of our initiatives that we're doing. Recently, I have shifted resources to support our court needs, but everything comes at a price, right? So our domestic violence section, for instance, some of our other sections, which are also critical, right? Our evictions are a huge concern here in the county, and we want to make sure that we're providing the services that our residents expect. However, obviously, we all have to make tough choices. So we have had our non-sworn professional staff do a little bit more or a little different duties than they're used to, and shifted different shifts. So what I just want to say to you is when we look at the report, and we'll probably get into that more here shortly, Montgomery County is in a unique position, being the most populous county. We have such a wide range of things that occur in that courthouse. It really is a small city, whether it's adoptions, marriages, divorces, criminal matters, other civil matters, they're going on every day. And the sheriff's office, of course, we don't have the, I'm not going to say luxury, but we don't have the ability to hold a call. If you have a patrol officer in the municipality or somewhere in the county, they also have to prioritize what they respond to. And we know that our county police partners and others are also facing staffing challenges. So the one thing about the courthouse is we have to find a way to meet all those needs. Otherwise, we just can't hold calls. I think you get where I'm going. So I know we're gonna have further discussion, but I appreciate the conversation.
Well, again, thank you. It's always been a concern about safety. I mean, I don't have to say the obvious, but and we're certainly very aware about the staffing, not just for sheriffs, but for every first responder that we have in Montgomery County, and it goes beyond that as well nationwide. And we'll get the county executive's suggested budget this Friday, and then we'll start to try to figure out what we do and what we don't have and how we can get there. But I I know that, whether or not, for instance, the cameras, the camera feeds that, whether they, do you share I guess it's your question, do you share the courthouse cameras with the police? How does that work?
So we are in discussions and we're working with Judge Bonifant. There are challenges to having access to our security cameras for a lot of reasons within the building. We are in conversations with our county police partners to perhaps look at some external camera support. You know, I recognize, this hearing is obviously a public venue, so I don't want to get into specifics
And
of
you
security.
shouldn't, right?
But we're looking at that, and this was already said once by Judge Dwyer, and I can't stress it enough. The amazing partnerships we have with our county police partners, as well as our municipalities, specifically with Rockville, they are just great partners. And when we have unfortunately seen these increases in incidents that are concerning incidents, whether they're veiled or specific threats, I cannot express how much Chief Yamada's team has been responsive and supportive.
And of course, they're always coming and going from the courthouse. I mean, there are police, obviously.
If I could respond
Please.
to this question. We have, and I put it in the form of an administrative order, a procedure in place now so that when any individual associated with courthouse, sheriff's, county attorney's office, we receive a subpoena if somebody wants to see that camera. Well, we start from a position of everything's open. We have to start from that. But we also have to make sure that the strategies and that are adopted by the sheriffs with regard to where the cameras are, where they station people, is not compromised by responding to a request for one of the videos. The other is absolutely have to keep jurors confidential. And that's a real concern. In the last couple of years, we've had at least 2 cases that I can think of off the top of my head where there's been juror intimidation or something like that. So that is a big issue that the judiciary at the state level is addressing right now. But by at least getting a process in place that we have, now everybody's not fumbling around wondering how do we handle this, and by not knowing exactly who to contact, we're in a better position to make sure the right decision is made with regard to what video should be turned over or something like that.
Now, Logan, are we going to go through parts of the report? How are you going to work that?
I'm happy to sort of visit each of these items one by one and give our
Okay.
guests an opportunity to
And
comment.
then if you all want to comment as we go through, yeah, go ahead. Sure. Go ahead.
So just before we walk through the report, so I served on the task force and it was a pleasure and an honor to do so and to elevate these issues, recognizing that all 24 jurisdictions across the state have widely varying situations, everything from where the parking is to the buildings being anywhere from over 200 years old in some portions of our courthouses to 3 years old. So they varied widely. And with respect specifically to the funding issues, since we are here and budget season is upon us, I was very cognizant of trying to find that middle ground, which was the route they chose as the recommended preference to have mix of state and local funding to help get this right-sized over a span of time, recognizing that not all of it could be done all at once. But one of the things that I thought was really critical, and we did have a discussion about during the task force meetings, but it only warranted a small sentence in the report, was that I said that all personnel working in a courthouse should have a minimum level of behavioral threat assessment training to understand what it is and to remove the potential that they might discount something as a threat that is a threat, vice versa. Because, we tell everyone, see something, say something. And certainly when there's a incident unfolding in the courtroom itself, it's very clear. a lot of times there are other observations that people may be making in the hallway that might warrant someone saying, heads up, they're headed to such and such courtroom. Seems a little off, might require some extra handling in there, right? Because they're transient through the lobby or through the court clerk when they're interacting with them, but that would be useful if people are more attuned to that, to sharing, so that we could be more preemptive in how we're managing things, recognizing that we have limited personnel with which to handle these things. So I just wanted to highlight that before Logan started.
Okay, please, Logan.
Sure. Visiting the matter of adequate security personnel, the task force again recommended these minimum standards on page 2 of the report. At least one court security officer present in the courtrooms. Second, assigned to court proceedings in which an in custody participant is present, or there is a proceeding that may result in a participant being remanded to custody. And or the presiding officer or security personnel have reason to believe that additional security may be necessary. And in addition to that, an additional roving CSO on each floor with one or more courtrooms or judicial chambers. These officers should meet the standards for a special police officer as approved by the Maryland Police Training and Standards Commission, or for a sworn law enforcement officer as required by the hiring authority, and also have any additional court-specific training that's necessary. With regards to the circuit court and the district court, the standard is currently met by the district court. And I'll mention that we have some guests here as well from the district court who would be able to speak to that further. This particular standard that was recommended by the task force is not currently met in the Montgomery County Circuit Court, nor is it met in the other 3 courts, circuit courts in the state with the largest jurisdictions, nor for that matter in half the state circuit courts overall. So the county is not alone in not currently meeting the standard. The sheriff's office is an accredited law enforcement agency through CALEA, and so does pursue best practices, but staffing continues to be a challenge. The only other recommendation from the task force of note in this area is regarding bailiffs in the district court. The task force did recommend converting the bailiffs that are on contract status to full-time employee status as well.
If I could, and I don't know if there's someone here from the district court that wanted to speak to this. Did you want to come forward and speak? And as you're coming forward, and please identify yourself, but if I could ask the sheriff and others who are directly involved in this, for budgets, if you could let us know, and I understand we have a staffing problem and just like you understand it, but if you could let us know what numbers you need in order to do what is being suggested, if we can hire that many people. But go ahead.
So
First thing he did was cut off your mic. Now, does he look like the sheriff or what? Yeah, he's the sheriff.
If I may go first. So first off, I appreciate Logan highlighting that we are an accredited agency. We're actually happen to be back in '95, the first accredited sheriff's office in the state of Maryland. We've successfully been reaccredited every session thereafter. And so what does that mean? If I can just briefly say. Again, that means that we don't just do the minimum standards set by the Maryland Police Correctional Training Commission or other entities, but that we really look at best practices, we look at our policies, et cetera, et cetera. So my office did submit, for your awareness, did submit a fiscal impact statement. If we were to meet the recommendations, and generally I'm in support of the recommendations of the task force, it's just how do we get there, right? And again, not to get into specifics of our security measures, because this is a very safe courthouse, but we always want to do better.
Absolutely.
And so we would look at a significant increase in our staffing. And there is a reference in there of having special police officers. Currently, we utilize sworn deputies in the sheriff's office within the circuit court. And there's a lot of good reasons for that. The deputies may not stay only in the court section. They have a lot of other dynamic duties. They may be serving protection orders. They may be effectuating arrests for warrants or other things. And I'm still committed to providing nothing against our special police officer partners, but providing the best level of service that we can. So it really matters, how do we get there? So we can definitely discuss that at the appropriate time, but it would require a significant additional staffing allotment to the sheriff's office.
And once you give us the number, once we get that number, it's not like the next day they have to go through training, et cetera. So
So that's absolutely correct. Now, I would like to point out real quick some positive things. Since becoming sheriff, I've really made recruiting and retention a priority, specifically recruiting. And as you noted, Councilmember Katz, that you don't just hire a deputy or a county police officer on day one and have them on the street day two, right? There is a process to the hiring process that takes time, and there's a reason it takes time. We want to make sure that we are conducting a proper background. We're making sure that we're psychologically testing, we're testing physical, medical screening, and doing all that. And then we're providing that baseline entry-level training, which is roughly 6 months. Additionally, another 3 months of field training. So that's your minimum amount of time that you're investing. And even then, just because you get an officer or a deputy that's technically certified, they don't have that experience component, right? And that's why we want to be very cautious. And we know that as we've seen significant retirements over the last couple of years in all of our agencies, that we're backfilling that with experience, or we're making sure we're providing that training to these new deputies.
Okay, thank you. Please, if you can identify yourself. There you go.
My name's Steve Barlow. I'm the District Court Security Manager, and I also served on the Security Task Force. Speaking to the bailiff position of special police officers and the allotted staffing in Montgomery County specifically, we allot 2 special police officers per courtroom, and then we also allow for 2 of them at the metal detector and X-ray machine, the security screening areas. That doesn't mean that we're fully up to full staffing here in Montgomery County, but like the sheriff also has problems, trying to recruit and fill all of his positions. The bailiff position is the same. We do leverage experience. 92% of our bailiff special police officers are all prior police, and those that weren't prior police officers have been prior correctional officers. So we leverage that experience into the SPO program, and it doesn't provide for the same level of police authority as a sheriff does, but the powers are the same on that specific property. We just don't have the ability to transport and photograph and do all those things afterwards. They just found a gun at Civil Courthouse this afternoon as I came in here, so coming through the screening area. So it's a very important job, as the sheriff said. There's a lot of consequences if it's not done properly, and I'm happy to answer any questions that I can for you guys.
Okay. Did you? So where's Logan? There's Logan. Logan blended right back in with the crowd there, and so I mean, I don't know that there's any disagreement that we need to do what we need to do for staffing, and just how do we get there? So I don't know if there's any other comments.
I was just wondering if Judge Dwyer and Judge Bonifant, and if I don't want to make you come back up, but if you have anything to add after they speak, surely. The data that was in our packet that we received is COVID era data onward. And I wanted you to have the opportunity to comment about what you're seeing now versus pre-pandemic scenarios in the courthouse.
So lack of
You're
stability.
going to lead, Your Honor. There you go.
Yeah, the lack of stability. And I don't know whether people just became more relaxed or didn't develop their socialization skills afterwards, but it's across the board. There's so many more individuals representing themselves now, and they get frustrated, and that's what I see. And it is so important for judges, and I'll tell you, to take on the skills that I watched former Captain Bean, Johnny Bean of the Sheriff's Office.
Sure.
I had an individual who was 75 years old. He refused to leave the table. And of course, the young attorney on the other side was pushing for this individual to be incarcerated. And that's all he needed to hear, to say, yes, lock me up. And he was not going to, and I had a courtroom full of people waiting for this.
Mhm.
And they teach us, they call it baby judge school,
Mhm.
that when things like that happen, get off the bench so the deputies don't have to worry about you. So
Right.
that they can control things. And Captain Bean came up, he calmed the individual down and just did a terrific job. And I talked to the young attorney later saying, you're aware of what's going, we're not going to incarcerate somebody who's 76 years old over a civil infraction. That's really what
Right.
it was.
Right.
And I think about that often, where if I can take that moment, look at the person in the eye, make sure they know that they're heard, and then tell them the reasons for the decision that I'm making. And that just calms it down, and make sure that they know they have other avenues if they disagree with me. Emphasize to them that I don't mind pushback as long as it's done politely. I have to remind attorneys of that a lot. But it's still, a lot of times I think it starts with me. We're the ones who have the power, don't abuse it, just, speak to the people, make sure they're being heard. And that'll let the air out of the balloon. And I think about that often, and I've said that to Captain Bean as well. What a good job he did. Of course, I had a room full of people, and my brother was in the back of the courtroom, and he came around to have lunch with me. He goes, "You call yourself a judge?"
As only a brother would do.
Right. Right. I had never heard the term baby judges school until I became a law clerk for a brand spanking new appellate judge who had to go to baby judges school during my clerkship. And so for 25 years, I have recognized that as the official way you all refer to the place new judges go for their onboarding is baby judges school.
Here's what a good bench you have in Montgomery
Mhm.
County. Judge Barry of our court was just asked to be the judge in charge of onboarding.
Excellent.
So that's a
Excellent.
real honor that appellate judge Ripken is asked to do. So it's I'm very proud of our bench. And, the whole force.
As we all are.
Is de-escalation training,
Yeah.
because we know we talk about it in the context of
Yeah.
law enforcement, but is de-escalation training a portion of baby judges school?
is.
And in terms of, because I know there's an annual judicial conference, right?
Yeah.
How much of a focus has there been on de-escalation or behavioral threat assessment inside that annual conference?
Not too much, but I predict that to change in light of Judge Wilkinson's death. But I want to echo what Judge Bonifant said. I don't know if COVID had anything to do with what we're seeing. I do think there's just a general lack of decorum and respect. I have seen it with jurors that we are trying to select. They're being brought in, of course, and some of them are quite disgruntled. And then you see it, of course, with litigants. And I think Judge Bonifant made a good point. We're seeing a lot more litigants who are self-represented, which is, access to justice is a big goal of ours. We want the courthouse doors to be open to anyone to come in and help and have the court hear their dispute. But I do think, particularly in a family law setting, I was a prosecutor for 28 years. And at the federal level and here in the county, I never felt threatened in a courtroom as a prosecutor by anyone in that courtroom. I never had to ask for help. I never had to ask for protection. And what I see now is family court is very volatile. It is dangerous. And the emotions are running high, particularly with individuals who are representing themselves, and they feel as if the system is not fair. They don't understand all the rules that are in place. And as much as Judge Bonifant and myself and my colleagues try to assist them, we cannot try the case for them.
Right.
And there is a level of frustration I have seen in family court that I never, ever saw as a prosecutor. And it, as I said last Friday, It was a very volatile situation. And you could see on people's faces, the other litigants in that courtroom, they were concerned and afraid by the loud voice, the up and down at the table, the yelling at the judge. It's a concerning situation. The emotions are high. So I don't know that it has anything to do with COVID, but the world has changed. And the level of respect that used to be commanded in a courtroom, in a courthouse, it is not there to the point we think it is.
And it's my understanding that the increase in pro se litigants is not just a circuit court issue. It's it was always
is.
decently prevalent in the district court, but that
Correct.
it has also risen exponentially in the district court as well. And Mr. Barlow.
Yes, so I just, thank you.
See, he can turn
He
that
can
on
help.
for you as well. He doesn't have to turn it on.
So I just wanted to say there is a significant mental health component to
Mhm.
most of the threats that we see. The District Court Security Office handles all the threats for district court in conjunction with the Judicial Threat Management Center. And so there's, I would say 80% or more of all of the threats or disobedience, some of the issues there all have a mental health component. On that, at the judicial conference, there's going to be an 1.5-hour presentation on de-escalation for the bench and for what the sheriffs are trained in through Maryland Police Training Commission, what the bailiffs are trained in. And as part of that, they're going to have someone with a mental health presentation that's actually suffered from that. So I won't be there. A deputy from Howard County is going to present on my behalf because I'm not able to make it.
Mhm.
But I would encourage everyone to attend that if they can.
And when you get the threats that you are in fact researching with the office at the administrative office of the courts that has that division, what is the interplay between them and local law enforcement who may have had other encounters with these individuals or with the Maryland Coordination and Analysis Center?
So Cliff Hisker from the Judicial Threat Management Center maintains a very large database of any type of threat that comes in. We do the same thing in district court. And then, of course, district court and the Judicial Threat Management Center shares information. We talk multiple times a day, every day. And coordination with that, in most cases, the Judicial Threat Management Center would contact the sheriffs of the respective counties because they're the ones who are in charge of the circuit court security. From there, they can use all different kinds of tools to find out more about someone. There's a bunch of different tools to use to do that. And then in many cases with a threat, they'll do a threat analysis based on points, and try to see how credible it is. And then a lot of times they will, assign someone for additional security for something like that if it warrants.
Are they checking to see if we happen to have folks who are indiscriminate as to which branch of government they are targeting on a given day? It may rotate, right? But, I know particularly at the state, there might have been threats within the executive branch that were also threats within the legislative branch and so on. Is that part of the analysis here? And I'm thinking back to the Christopher Hassan case where, again, we don't have a domestic terrorism federal charge in the United States. It's a problem. But, that individual had a hit list that was varying. It was elected officials, it was appointed officials, it was members of the judiciary, right? So what kind of nexus is there with overlapping entities or folks within local law enforcement departments that are also doing behavioral threat assessment so that we are not letting something fall through the cracks?
So again, we're very fortunate that we have really great partnerships, and I can't say enough great things about our partners at the state level. And again, when we get that information, not only are we having conversations and notifying any potentially affected judges as well as Judge Bonifant, but again, working with our county police partners, that have other resources that can determine,
Mhm.
I remember the specific case you're talking about with that Coast Guard officer and
I think
you
you
know,
might have been sitting next to me when we were
I
briefed
might
on
have,
it.
yes, ma'am. And we continue to work on it. And I think we're a lot better today than
Mhm.
we were then, but we always want to do better. One thing I would like to just highlight that I don't think we've talked about yet, I agree with everything the judges have said that's been presented. But again, not only I believe we're having more and more instances of folks that are frustrated, that are acting out, that are showing this concerning behavior. The amount of work that's coming through the circuit court continues to increase. And I think what's happening is all of us we're seeing that our allotted staffing and other things just have not kept up.
Right.
So when you look at the Family Justice Center, and you all know that it falls under the Sheriff's Office, but it's a complete partnership with so many other stakeholders. The amount of protective orders that are coming in,
Right.
peace orders, continues to increase. And I know that one of the things we're going to be doing under our budget submission is trying to look at more client assistance specialists to deal with those issues. And as Judge Dwyer said, it's those civil cases oftentimes which are some of the most concerning. Now, that being said, we currently have a 4-defendant, co-defendant murder trial going on in the circuit court, and we are seeing more and more of these very serious crimes
Right.
in the county. Now, Montgomery County is a very safe county, but again, with 1.1 growing million people, we have a number of serious crimes that occur in the county. All that takes resources, and that's something the Sheriff's Office, we didn't have to deal with multiple murder trials going on, multiple defendants, MS-13 members. We're just, those are all drawing resources. So.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead. She'll call you back up in a second. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Appreciate all the background, everything that's been said today. This is important, and glad that we're getting to have some of the conversation now that we're obviously going to have to continue through, operating discussions. And I just was curious if we have information now about how the patterns and trends that you all are seeing on the ground here look at the, state level, nationwide. I would assume that there's echoes. I don't know if this is something that we know now, but I would just be interested in if there's, things that we can learn there.
I keep track of number of criminal matters we have pending, the number of custody matters pending, and the number of juvenile matters pending. For the first time this past month, we went back under having 1,000 open criminal matters. We've consistently been 1,050 for the past year. And to put that into context, prior to the pandemic, we had 650 open criminal matters. So we have these additional cases. I'm pleased we brought it down. I was going to bring it up at the judges meeting tonight. The other is the custody matters. We have experienced a reduction over the last few months in the number of open custody matters. And maybe it's because I give those priority. I overbook the judges. I give them 2 and 3 cases each and every day. And then a week or 2 weeks before the week of trials, I sit down and give priority to the ones that are going to be heard. And so I have to give the physical custody cases priority over others because we need to resolve that as soon as possible. In Montgomery County, we're different than other jurisdictions around the state. We bifurcate family cases, meaning that we hold a trial to address the custody issues within 4 to 5 months. That's the goal. And then all the other issues are resolved at the final, we call it final merits, which could be a year from now. And I frustrate a lot of individuals with the merits cases because they'll be 2 or 3 times, and I've had to postpone them because I will schedule those physical custody cases first. But the physical custody cases have been going down, so the strategy is working. The special immigrant juvenile status cases that we've been handling, we've been getting on average over 100 new cases each month. Not surprisingly, the last 2 months, that number has dropped significantly, and for the reasons I'm sure everybody's aware. So, I keep an eye on that. So when you ask me trends and things, that's exactly what I do. We have a very good two statisticians in the court that keep me informed, and they've set up a way that now I can go in every single day and know what the number of cases are. The juvenile cases, they're creeping back up right now, and that's concerning. So I hope that answers your question as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And then also the, the increase in volatility that you're seeing in family courts. I wonder if that's something also that's harder to track, I would think. But I'm just curious as to whether that's something that's being.
65% of the court's docket are family cases, and 70% of those, one side or the other is self-represented. So, and we were sitting, I forget which judge's investiture, and I had Chief Judge Getty sitting next to me, came down, and I said that, or somebody said it, he goes, really, 65%? I said, that's exactly.
Is that a cause? Is that a symptom?
Yeah, give it a shot, dude.
I think we are a county of tremendous resources, and that South Tower was built for family cases. And I think, I talked about this earlier, access to justice. People understand they can walk in that courthouse. There's a family law self-help center, and they take advantage of it. And that's a good thing. People shouldn't be required to stay in bad relationships, particularly when there's violence in those relationships. So I don't know if the volatility has anything to do with the numbers increasing. I don't know. I think it'll take a sociologist to figure that out. But Judge Bonifant said it, Sheriff Wee said it. The people that we deal with, the public, I think that they are frustrated over a variety of things in their lives. And we, judges, sheriffs in uniforms, are taking the brunt of that sometimes. And but I don't know what came first. But is there an increase in it? I've been on the bench for 8 years now, and I don't know if there's been an increase in it. I think perhaps there has. I think that the people are very stressed, and they're the gentleman who was sitting at the end of the table just now, do not discount the mental health component. I think that's obvious to all of us that is a significant factor.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And obviously, there are pressing issues there right now today that we need to deal with and make sure that everybody is safe. And then there's also the further issues that we will need to discuss because we need to get to the root issues. And we have to do both. So that should be easy, right? So.
Just where perhaps one of the most surprising thing you said is it's already 8 years since you've been a judge. Doesn't seem possible.
Since that big party we had.
Yeah. So for that one, I think everybody's in agreement that we need to do what is being suggested. The difficult part will be to do it. But and then I'm going to turn back to Logan, who's and to go back, I guess, through the other points.
Thank you. So the first item that the committee just discussed regarded staffing and personnel. The second and third items both regard infrastructure to some extent. So the second item of area of concern regarding recommendations is entry and parking. The task force noted best practice is for parking for judicial officials to be secure, attached, and underground. Of course, this is not feasible for most existing facilities. So going forward, the task force recommended that new facilities include that. In the meantime, for facilities that do not have that, there were recommendations to implement measures, including enclosure of the parking area, quick lift gate systems, video intercom systems, lighting, call box and key card systems, and security personnel escorts of judicial officers to and from the area. So our guests may be able to speak to the extent possible. Of course, some of this would be confidential to the extent to which those have been able to be implemented.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say, once we get into the actual security, I don't know how much we want to have that discussion at this moment. But I think it would be fair to say, and my colleagues will, if they disagree with me, they'll tell me, but I think it would be fair to say that we would like to figure out how we can get there and how it can be done and keep everyone safe. So Am I good on that for both of those? Okay, go ahead, let's,
And then the final area was regarding secure public spaces in general. The task force recommended hardening facilities with reinforced glass, which would include level 4 bulletproof glass in vulnerable areas, installing video surveillance in all public areas and hallways, securing courtroom furniture to the floor to the extent possible, and reinforcing the judicial officer's bench with bulletproof materials and locating it a safe distance from trial tables and the witness stand. Additionally, the task force recommended that officers not be required to enter public areas in connection with ordinary duties. If they do need to do so, they should be accompanied by security personnel. And the task force also emphasized the importance of proper security screening. So this is broadly other infrastructure and security measures.
and there again, I think all of us are in agreement with that, but I guess the question becomes, and the sheriff, I guess, would be the ones to help us figure this out, is what can be done quickly or as quickly as possible, and what's going to take longer.
So without getting into specifics, currently we're meeting many of these recommendations. There's a few we're not. We've been very fortunate, at least as of the past few years, to receive additional funding from our state partners to provide security enhancements. And every year we continue to try to improve the existing security, whether it's updated cameras, video retention, and other physical security items. There's still some room for growth within this report. I know that Mr. Sheridan and Judge Bonifant, you've seen some formal requests to enhancing some of the physical structure at the circuit court, which is going to go a long way in providing a little bit more safety and security for our judges and their immediate staff. But again, as we move forward, we'll probably be putting in some of this for additional budget items.
Please.
Mr. Sheridan that he was addressing is the court administrator 2 rows back.
Yeah, he's waving to us.
Yes, I like the camera. I can see what's
Yeah,
going
yeah.
on. I, again, don't want to go into specifics, but I've been very pleased with what's been taking place recently through efforts from Mr. Sheridan and the sheriff as well. Things are being done. So.
Well, and I'm glad, but it's an absolute shame that it even has to be considered. I mean, to your points earlier, that the safety is just not what it used to be, I guess is the way to say it. Anything else?
Nothing else to add.
Anything else that we should be hearing?
I'm going to take 30 seconds of
Yes, sir.
I have been asked to lead the Sims project in Montgomery County, and I am excited about it. Things are happening to the point that I recently had a conversation with Judge Mary Elsa Bernard, senior judge. She was so impressed with the services and that were provided to those who were re-entering in Howard County. And so I was invited to a meeting just last week, realized we had similar services here in Montgomery County. That's one of the main goals of SIM is to communicate better so that everyone has better understanding of what services can be provided and what can be done. I'm confident not all the judges on the bench know the reentry services that are out there. And so I feel like we already have a success there. And the council may like to hear this. I think if it's successful, fewer resources will be needed because we can get services to people who are mental health crisis or substance abuse sooner. And if we can do that, we'll keep them out of the criminal justice system.
I have a fortune of seeing Judge Bernard. She's a co-chair of the reentry committee,
Yes.
whatever it's called. I always get committees confused anyhow. And then they just change the name on you, so why learn them? But she certainly is staying very active and very helpful. So, yeah. Okay, we good? Thank you
Thank
very
you
much
all.
for all that you do.
Thank you.
All right, so is it Ms. Farag is back up here? Okay, please.
Good afternoon again. I've got two projects for you under correction and rehabilitation. And the first one is the Montgomery County Correctional Facility Sewer Project, and this is up at MCCF up in Boyd's. This was actually good news. The project was initially needed to prevent excess trash from entering the sanitary sewer system. They were to install new equipment that was expected to reduce sewer overflow at the Wheeling Lane Pump Station, decrease maintenance repairs to WSSC water equipment, and eliminate sewer overflow cleanup and costs and penalties from WSSC water. So the recommended change today is actually reducing expenditures by $333,000. Corrections has advised that the sewage grinders were impacted due to high volumes of batteries and latex gloves being purposely flushed down the toilets. This occurred during COVID. There were some incarcerated individuals who would flush large amounts of latex gloves in particular, and they were also throwing batteries in the toilets. However, since July of 2024, Corrections and Rehabilitation implemented tablets. They implemented a tablet program for all incarcerated individuals, which eliminated the need for them to provide batteries for TV headsets. And based on the fact of this program change and no need for batteries anymore, Correction and Rehabilitation no longer needs a new or upgraded grinder. So this is reflecting the savings in that project. For the Justice Center project, this is the new building that would house and functions the functions of central processing and detention here in Rockville to support processing new arrestees and detaining remanded individuals for up to 72 hours. The amended project here just reflects a minor project acceleration, which is shifting $9,000 from FY26 up to FY24, and there is no substantive change in the project scope. And I'm recommending approval of both projects as submitted.
Thank you. If I could ask the panel to please introduce themselves.
My name is Gregory Boykin, Deputy Director, Department of General Services.
Ben Stevenson, Director of the Department of Correction and Rehabilitation.
Katie Bryant-Higgins, OMB Analyst.
Thank you all for being here and for everything you do. You know, this is one of those deals that it's the very thing you don't think about that comes back to being something you should have thought about. And this is, I mean, you have to do it. Yeah, I mean, it's reality and, you know, it's what is needed, but I'm fine with it. I don't know if, or is everybody okay? But I don't know how you couldn't be fine with it. We need to do what we need to do. So thank you very much, and thank you for everything you do. And then we have one last item today. And that is 2724. There you, some people memorize numbers. Yeah, oh, you have your notes. Some people look at their notes. Yeah, okay. All right.
Be your trusty side.
Yeah, and you're doing very, very good and very trusty. Let's see what we got here. Figure out where I am. Okay. And Ms. Nadeau, how are you? Thank you for all that you're doing as well for us. And Director Harefield is here. And in fact, why don't I ask the panel to please tell us who they are? I feel like some kind of a game show host here. Director Harefield, could you please? Yeah, there you go.
I'm Director Harefield from the Office of Animal Services.
Spencer Kelly at the Office of Animal Services.
Adrian Craver with OMB.
And if you'd like to lead us through, please.
Sure. Hello, committee. I think this is my first time at public safety, which is very shocking.
And you're doing a great job
Oh,
so
thank you.
far.
Okay, so Bill 2724, which is sponsored by the committee. The intent of the bill is to reduce overcrowding at the animal shelter and by accelerating the timeline for the adoption process. So under current county law, an impounded animal is considered abandoned and becomes county property if not redeemed within 5 days of notice being sent out to the owner. What this bill would do is reduce that time to 3 days. So going through the statements in the public hearing, no one testified. We received no testimony. The fiscal impact statement noted that this is not expected to impact county revenues or expenditures. The economic impact statement noted an insignificant impact on economic conditions, and the climate assessment noted no impact on the county's contribution to addressing climate change. The racial equity and social justice impact statement did have a bit more to say. It found that this could have a negative impact on racial equity and social justice in the county because reducing the time frame for pet owners to pick up their pets might negatively impact persons of color who disproportionately have limited disposable time. The thinking there being if you have 3 days instead of 5 days and you're juggling different jobs, you might not have as much time to pick up your pet. And also noted that BIPOC pet owners are less aware of local legal requirements. And there's a proposed amendment that I will discuss towards the end of the packet. So what the bill does, well, first I'll start with some background. This was generated by a briefing you all held in July 2024 from Maddie's Million Pet Challenge. There is a table on page 3 of your staff report that breaks down by pet. So birds, cats, dogs, livestock, other. I think we've jokingly said others, probably reptiles. We're trying to think of other types of birds or other types of pets here. And notes unclaimed, reclaimed in 3 days, reclaimed 3 to 5 days, and after 5. And you'll notice that dramatic difference, basically showing that typically after 3 days, people are not picking up these animals. So the bill has a few changes. The first thing that the bill does is that the Office of Animal Services must notify the owner by first-class mail, so the owner's last known address. The bill would add that you could also notify the owner by posting a notice on the door, which is even better and consistent with current practices. Second, also having to do with notification. If the pet owner can't be located, under current law, notice is required in a newspaper. The bill would add that you could also post on the website. For everyone listening, that's the County Animal Services and Adoption Center website. If your pet is ever lost, that is where to go check. And that is also consistent with current practices. I'm going to jump to the amendments here.
Please.
Before explaining what the bill currently says as introduced. So right now, under this chapter of the bill, there's a 5-day appeal period. So when this was reduced to 5, in discussion with the sponsors and staff, there was this concern that if you reduce it from 5 days to 3 days, you have this weird 2 days in the appeal window. So as introduced, what the bill clarified was that the abandonment is not an appealable decision because it's not a decision of the director to not pick up your pet. However, after this was introduced, after meeting with the Office of the County Attorney, they disagreed. And the argument was that we might have due process issues because there might be reasons that somebody tried to pick up their pet and it was not returned to them, and that should still be appealable. So the first recommendation from council staff here is to strike the language that made any adjustments to the appeal rights.
Go ahead.
Do we know how often it's happened where somebody's tried to pick up their pet and then couldn't, and so then it led to an appeal?
Carolyn, you're going to need to, there you go.
It could happen, but in those situations, we would give them a notice that we're seizing their pet
Mhm.
and then their right to appeal.
Right, because once you've issued a notice to seize the pet,
Now it's a legal issue.
then there is a due process right
Right.
that's triggered.
Right.
So am I correct in saying there are due process rights already built into this? And that the amendment proposed, and I hear, and I love our friends at the county attorney's office, but that it may in fact be somewhat redundant because it isn't really like in the event that the pet isn't picked up for whatever reason, there's a subsequent notice that does trigger that due process, right? Is that right?
Yes, that is true.
Okay.
So agree.
Okay.
So yes, the amendment here was to, rather than changing something and unintentionally making it confusing, even though it is, as you noted and explained, likely that you would receive that second notice and that's where the due process right is triggered.
Right.
The cleanup here is just to eliminate any possible confusion, just in case.
I don't mind eliminating the confusion. I just want to I want to be clear that we already do have due process rights, that they
We don't wanna
are.
make it more confusing.
I'd like to not make it more confusing and create problems by putting something there that, like 5 lawyers in a room could split hairs over anything, right?
And we often do.
And we often do. But like if I'm trying to think how to, and to the point about the racial equity and social justice, comments to this bill, okay, what else could we be doing to make it clearer how this works, how to come, how to how to retrieve your pet? I do think the posting on the website is more intuitively where people do look, right? When a pet is gone and they start posting on Nextdoor and everything else, trying to see, if anyone has seen it, that is more common than newspapers these days. I know we have other issues with why we still use the newspapers, and I got it, but so I mean, I will go with the will of the committee on this. I don't believe the amendment is necessary, but I yield to my colleagues.
I'm a belt and suspenders kind of guy, and I don't believe it's absolutely necessary, but I'd much rather have it so that it's there and that someone is not as confused, although I don't know, to your point, whether it's more confusing or less confusing. That's always in the mind of the beholder, but I'm okay with the amendment. And so
Agree with that. If it's going to be less confusing generally, then, and it's not going to cause a problem, is it going to cause a problem that you're saying?
I want to add that the 3-day change in our hold period to 3-day is actually aligning with state law.
Right.
Yeah.
And the other jurisdictions like Gaithersburg, they have a 3-day hold period.
Right.
And with regards to the racial justice, chances are the animal's going to be here 5 days from now. I mean, it just allows us to move forward with any medical care that we need to move forward with, and like sterilization and that kind of thing. So if an owner was to come after that 5-day period, even 10 days, sometimes it's, if the animal's there, we want to get it back to its rightful owner always. So that isn't really necessarily true. The only thing it might do is go from a 17-day length of stay in the shelter to now a 15-day length of, that's what we're going to see the impact.
I think what as far as I'm concerned, we should try this. If it doesn't work, you know where we are, you let us know, and then we'll figure out what's next. But I think the amendment, so we're okay on that?
Yeah, I said I.
Yeah. So it was a 2-1 became a 3-0. Okay. And what was the other part of the amendment?
Yes, so the next amendment, and this is something that came up in discussing the appeal issue, is part of the problem is we all use the word stray animal, which is not actually defined in this chapter. It talks about impounded animal, which includes both animals that, OAS might take for safety reasons, as well as, Fluffy running away. So the proposal from council staff here is to, one, define stray animal, and then instead of where it was written in the bill that it changed the 5 to a 3 was in that impounded section. So instead create a new stray animal section. So this way you define what a stray animal is. It's very clear that we mean the animals that are lost without a license or a tag or any form of ownership, and then say that is where we are reducing the period to 3 days. So that language is on page 5 for you. And a stray animal is an animal whose owner cannot be identified.
I'm good with that. Go ahead.
Any concerns, Director Harefield?
What if it's I do. A stray animal is an animal who's running at large, whether or not there's an owner. I think there's a difference there.
Are we looking to be,
Because I'm just thinking that, I'm sorry, that a stray animal is an animal who's running at large.
we're looking to be more inclusive with the language, right?
That's a clarifying question. So a stray animal could be a feral cat.
It could be.
Could also be Fluffy, my cat. I don't have a cat, but could be Fluffy, right?
But if
yeah.
it's a cat, it's gonna be named Fluffy. I can tell you.
But so the animal may or may not have an owner, but could be a stray.
Or it could be a
Identify.
dog that's a habitual offender.
Okay.
Could we change?
There's one of those in my
Could
neighborhood.
we change?
No, it has
So,
a,
but he's
it's,
still running astray.
yeah, it's running, it runs around and
And
it,
the owner may choose not, and we're still gonna notify him because that's.
Yeah,
But the
it-
owner may choose not to come forward. or
It-
abandon
it actually has a tag on it that says, I'm not joking, I know where I live.
the
Mhm.
But the way this definition is an owner cannot be identified, does the word strays do we need to add that a stray is an owner, an animal whose owner cannot be can or cannot be identified, but is running at large? Is that the main point?
I think it's, yeah, I think it is an animal that's running at large. It's not an animal that's part of a cruelty case. Unless you want to have separate, unless the intent is to, and I don't mean to throw this at
Right.
this point, but unless the intent is that owned animals stay for 5 days versus animals that aren't, there's no, we can.
Yes, so if I can help here, so the failure to redeem section will still say that an animal not redeemed by its owner within 5 days
Mhm.
becomes county property. So this is a separate section for if there is an owner. If they don't know the owner, then it's 3 days instead of the 5 days. So there'll be two different timelines.
Is that consistent with state law and having the
Yes.
two different pieces?
So under state law, it is 3 days and it includes the language about the ownership under the state.
It's 3
code.
days for stray and 5 days for impounded.
Well, you're saying it's always 3, but
There's three.
I do think it's 3 across the board for
Okay,
state.
well, I mean, if we're trying to align with state,
yeah, we need
then
to
we
do
should
that.
do 3 for everything, right? And given the fact that they're gonna be there still on, yeah.
I think the hang up was, was that the concern that with, we seize an animal for, say, a dangerous dog. Dog is involved somebody, who sees that dog. There's a 5-day hold period where people have an opportunity to appeal it. The seizure or a right, did we make a rightful decision? And they're concerned that this is gonna become very murky in this situation, but I disagree. I don't think it is. I think it's, again, redundant.
Yeah, that would seem as though because that has its own specific
Right.
process with its own timing
And
that's triggered by those actions, then that fit, you
In the
know, you
code?
go down that, yeah, you go down that other path
Again,
from the very beginning with that animal in that situation. So I don't think it's in conflict
and
and
cruelty, and they all have the same.
Well, it sounds like then if we add the failure to redeem section, then that actually might run into conflict with, if we're addressing this elsewhere in the code, these particular situations that we're trying to avoid, if they're already addressed somewhere else in the code, then we should not also address them here. But it does seem, maybe we should define stray animals here as being independent of those other categories that are already defined elsewhere that lead to those tracks, unless that's redundant also, because everybody knows what stray means and that's not a
Well,
problem.
to me, there's.
Animals found at large without a
Feature
license.
supersedes this.
Say it
Okay.
again?
right,
It's
okay,
easy.
right.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
because that's an action of the government in seizing the animal and then it
Then
has
you
its
have
own
a
process.
But we do need a definition of stray since we don't have it, so
Which is
this is saying that they cannot be identified.
I'm okay with the amended language for stray that's in section 5101. It's the proposed to add the number 5 in 5304 that I think is problematic and should just stay at 3 in order to be consistent, correct?
Should change. So right now it's 3. In current county law, it's
Oh,
3.
then
And then
then
the
let us-
bill changed, it's 5, sorry. In current county law, it's 5.
yes,
And the bill was going to change it to 3.
right.
But
And then
is
this
where-
proposes it to change it back to 5, and I would like to not do that.
Okay, so what this would do is, the reason for this is that you still have 5 days to appeal from that notice. So right now, the 5 that exists in current county law aligns with the appeal period
For what notice?
for a failure to redeem an impounded animal. The OAS sends you a notice and you have 5 days to pick up that animal. and you also have 5 days to appeal. So if you reduce it to 3, there's this weird like 2-day window, which might not matter if the animal is still there.
So for, if we seize the animal, you have 5 days.
Yeah.
To pick up the animal, but we wouldn't, if we're seizing it, we're depriving you of your property of due process, you have 5 days to appeal that seizure. But if we're putting notice on people's door, they have 5 days to pick up, that's because of the stray hold that we currently have. Does that make sense?
So the way it's phrased in the code, because it doesn't have the word stray, it just says an impounded animal is considered abandoned and becomes county property if not redeemed by its owner within 5 days.
That's what current code.
That's what
But
current
that's the
code
part that I'm trying
says.
to change.
Yes, so the proposal from council staff here was to do a subsequent section called stray
Just for the
animals,
strays.
for the
Got it.
animals who
Got it.
cannot be identified.
Okay.
That with, so because you could find a pet that's cannot be identified, so you post it on the website, and that would have to stay up for the 3 days that the person has to collect. So there's those 2 categories of animals are treated differently.
Gotcha.
Does that make
Understood.
sense?
Yes.
So there's not another section in county code where this is addressed. This is the section where that
Yes.
is
Yes.
addressed.
Yeah.
I'm on
That
the,
stays-
I'm on the
okay.
same sheet of music now and I'm okay.
It's a very confusing chapter, I know.
Okay, well, I think we are okay with this definition, right?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. And the change from the 5 to the 3. To be, first off, we should have been doing that years ago.
But only in the
I
stray
mean,
part, not in.
Yeah,
the-
no, but I
Right.
mean, because of the
Not
state law.
affecting the,
Yeah.
right.
Okay, are we sort of clear?
Yes, I think that amendment part is clear.
Okay.
The last part, was the RESJ concern. One of the recommendations from OLO, was to just publicize changes made in the bill. I know we have a very large county, so I defer to the committee and, the department on what the easiest way to do would be that, to publicize that it is now 3 days and not 5 days for stray animals or animals found without a tag. So that's just a discussion point for the committee, not a proposed amendment.
There again, I think it's something we need to change and see if it's causing a problem. To your point, in Gaithersburg, you're saying does 3 days now.
Mhm.
And I guess, do you house Gaithersburg's pets? So, I mean, you talk about confusing, it's confusing to start with. So, I'm fine to try this. We had the discussion way back when. Every member of this committee was the co-sponsor, and then we had people that came forward and said, how about this one, you know, so. But I'm fine with this. Good,
Yes.
good. We're good. Thank you very much. Anything else? No? With that, we are adjourned. Thanks. When they came, you figure how many more people